Yo, welcome. It's live at 5. Jeb Smith and Josh Lewis here to answer your real estate and mortgage questions like we do every Wednesday night. So if you're new to us, we appreciate you being here. Thanks for joining us. If you have questions, you have comments, you think we're idiots, whatever it is, put it in the comments below. We're happy to address it all. We do appreciate you being here, like I mentioned. So Josh, welcome to the show, my friend. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. I have two and a half weeks until they cut my arm off. So until then, we're going to enjoy what we have, and hopefully the way they reattach it is successful and ends in a happy result for me.
It would actually be kind of cool if they like gave you something that wasn't like even supposed to be there, like a hook or something.
No, like a bionic arm where I could like punch your head off, just knock it right off your head with this bionic arm. That'd be dangerous.
I should do a YouTube video where we just do your surgery. We watch it, we analyze it, give our commentary on it. It'd be fantastic.
That's a good idea.
So we've got some news over the last week since we were here. We've talked about it in some videos, and there's a lot of conversation around it. I know we're going to get some questions on it. Zillow has come out, right? Zillow has come out and said that they're stopping their iBuying program. So Zillow, right at the moment, is one of the biggest buyers. Companies buying property, iBuyers, internet buyers. You go in, type in your address, they make you an offer on your property, so on and so forth. So I put a video out without seeing the article that Zillow had posted, and immediately people start, emailing me, hey, Zillow stopped buying. They think the market's going to crash, blah, blah, blah. So I go read the actual article, and it's not that they think there's a crash coming, right? They have a backlog of properties. And essentially what they've done is they've blamed it on the fact that they can't get enough employees to actually do the work. And I can be, an outsider looking in, say BS, right? There's obviously something more to it. But what I can tell you, at the rate that Zillow was buying properties, they probably do have a backlog, right? Because a lot of what they're doing is some buying properties, they're fixing them up and they're putting them back on the market. A lot of times they're not just buying a property and putting it right back on the market. They're doing some quote unquote upgrades, if you will, and they need workers to be able to do that. They also, there's a lot involved there. So whether or not, that's actually the case, I can assure you they're not going anywhere. For many reasons, right? That's the majority of their profit. You've got every other iBuying platform out there, Open Door, Rex, whoever else it is in that space that said we're not stopping, like we're going to continue full force, right? We're continuing to move forward. So thoughts on that, Josh? I mean, we talk, we don't really talk a lot about employment on air, but between you and I and some of the articles that we read, a lot of it addresses the employment, not necessarily gap at the moment, but the lack of people wanting to actually work, right? The people that are the fact that there's a lot of opportunities out there for people to work in almost every space, but no one is willing to come to the table to do it.
Yeah, the employment piece is interesting in nearly every article that I've been reading over the last couple of weeks. Some really good experts and experts with access to other experts in labor. No one has a good explanation for it. Nothing has really changed post-COVID. I don't believe that everyone is afraid of COVID. They don't want to go back to work. There are good jobs available, and then there's people out there not taking them. Even if we're not talking about necessarily what would be defined as good jobs, you see, it used to be a big deal for us here in Southern California. Now there's In-N-Outs everywhere, but we've always had In-N-Out, and it would be like, hey, you can get a job at In-N-Out. It starts at $15 an hour. Now you see signs at all of the fast food places, 17, 21, just crazy hourly rates to attract people in. So there's good jobs, there's entry-level jobs, they're all paying more and they all have openings, and yet they're not getting filled. We've talked 57 times here on the show about the ships backing up offshore here. The Port of Los Angeles and the Port of Long Beach have said they're going to run 24 hours a day to unload the ships. And the answer is, well, that doesn't solve anything, because once you get the ships unloaded, they have to go on trucks. There's not enough truck drivers to get everything where it needs to go. And no one has good answers to this. But stepping back to Zillow and saying what's more likely, that they have data that says, hey, stop buying houses because it's going to come to a screeching halt, or they, like you said, they have enough on their plate right now. They've bought a ton of homes. They have a backlog and they don't have the employees to manage them. Interestingly, I got my little Zillow monthly email for my house today. They were only about $200,000 off on the value, but it still had the button in there, said, want to sell Zillow your house? So either they're stealthily still buying, or they haven't reprogrammed everything when they made the announcement. But when you look, Open Door and the other competitors, none of them really have stepped away or
Right.
backed away and plan to. So until we see that, like the reality is, the market right now is, there's danger there, in the sense that when you're buying at elevated values, you need to turn and resell them. And the business model for Zillow and Open Door and these other places is you have a large amount of fee income on the purchase. So even if you turn around, someone had asked last week, hey,
Yeah.
Redfin bought a house and turned around and listed it for the same amount. Well, cool. They can make money buying a house and selling it for the same amount because they have such large fees in their deals. But what you can't have is a big decrease in value. So when the decrease comes, they will all back away pretty quickly. They're not going to keep buying into a down market. It's just, I don't read anything into the Zillow news as to saying that. I mean, we talked, what, 2 weeks ago, they came out with their forecast for next year. They're forecasting 11% gains
Right. It was like a
for.
week before, right? And that was going to bring up my next comment. It's like, if you're Zillow, you don't just decide on the day that they made the announcement that, hey, we're going to stop buying property. This is something that's probably been in the works for, I would think, a couple of weeks, right? They're probably doing their own research, trying to figure out where they are. And meanwhile, there's media, there's PR getting released saying, hey, we think values are going to increase by 11.7% or whatever that number was. If you thought that the market was going to stall, or for whatever reason, you wouldn't be throwing that out there at the same time, right? You would more strategically you know put out the information, right? You would probably not come out and say that the market's going to appreciate if you plan to stop buying and what have you. But it's a whole different conversation. So interest rates, we always talk about rates. I mean, hell, you can just start with it now. It's in the news. A lot of people think that we're going to see rates upwards of 4% here shortly. The 10 years, trending, it's above 1.67, or it was as of this morning or yesterday. I don't remember the day. It's all starting to blend together a little bit. Rates, where are
And
they? Where do you see them going?
so we had hit 174 in the spring, and that's looking like we're gonna test that. So we were hoping to stop somewhere around 157, and then 161, 167. We're looking at 174 would be the next major level of support. And really, the markets always get worried. We had about 3 straight months of a sideways market. It was sort of Goldilocks for everyone. You don't have to lock your loan; they're not going to get worse. They weren't really getting better. So we got past that, and now the market is saying, what could go wrong, what could be a problem. So we were talking earlier in the year, the Fed was strongly in the camp that inflation is transitory, largely due to supply side issues. The inflation that we're seeing is not demand driven. We haven't had a massive increase in demand. We just talked about people not taking jobs. So we don't see the consumer spending and buying everything in sight and pushing up prices. We're having a hard time getting goods to market, and therefore what is there gets snapped up with the lesser demand, or whatever demand exists. So in looking at that, we can look forward. You can sort of reverse engineer. We talked earlier in the year that CPI was going to be hot all year, and we're going to get 2 hot readings the next 2 months, because we have low readings from last year when we're sort of in the trough of COVID. So low reads are going to come off last year, and a higher reads are going to come on this year. So you're going to see really hot inflation. So the pressure that the bond market is feeling right now is not going to dissipate for the next 30 to 60 days. So if you have a timeline between now and the end of the year, I don't think we're going to see a bunch of relief. We've talked before how rates generally don't go in a straight direction. So even if the trend is up, you get a week or two where they'll correct and come back down before following that move. Now, that being said, I don't think rates are shooting to the moon. Jeb, you and I had a conversation earlier today. A couple of experts, Ivy Zellman, really strong on housing, Logan Modeshami over at Housing Wire, and they both have a thought that we will see a slowing in demand due to affordability. So there's three components that go into affordability. Home prices, we all know what's happened to home prices, they're at all-time highs. Interest rates are still great, but not at their all-time lows. And then income's been increasing. So income increasing, rates under control, but housing prices going up. So what would impact affordability would be rates going up. Now, Ivy Zelman thinks that we'll see a 4% rate. Fannie Mae came out with their figure that we'll see a 4% rate by the end of 22. And that's really, I was just wanting to make sure that next year is actually 22. I didn't get my years mixed up. So by the end of 22, they're predicting 4%. But if you look, they also predicted the same thing this year, that we would see 3.75 by the end of the year. Without boring you guys to death with a long academic paper that Jeb and I went through earlier this week, the government debt is problematic. The government can't afford to have higher interest rates. The government borrowing is taking money away from productive purposes. It limits the growth of the economy. When you have a slow growing economy, you do not have inflation. So the inflation could drag on through the first part of next year. It could drag on through the end of next year, and it's all supply side related. If and when the supply issues, the supply constraints get worked through, we don't have this excess demand pushing things higher. So when inflation clears, the long-term 40-year downtrend in interest rates will be back in play. So is that 6 months from now? Is it 12 months from now? Is it 24 months from now? I don't know. But I will still sit here and say every week we're going to see lower interest rates than what we saw at the low of last year. Whether that's a 0.25% or a 0.5% or a full percent lower, we have to wait and see, but it's going to go lower because it's the only way that all of the over-indebted economies around the globe can survive. Governments that have borrowed too much money, how they can survive and not default on their debt is keeping rates really low. There's artificial manipulation of that, and then there's actual consequences of the borrowing that will push rates lower. So long way of saying your FHA and VA rates are still in the mid to high twos, and your conventional rates for the best borrowers are in the low threes. Spectacular interest rates. So we have support for buyers, lots of buyers in the market, not nearly as hot as the spring when every property had 35 offers on it. But Jeb can tell you every client we have that wants to go out and write an offer is in a competitive bidding situation.
No, and I will add to that. Every week we address inventory locally. Orange County today. Last week we were sitting in the high 1900s with regards to active properties. Today, I think we're at like 1943 active properties. So we're down a little bit, not by much, but inventory hasn't increased in the past week as far as Wednesday to Wednesday goes. And in Huntington Beach, we actually have a couple more homes on the market. I think as of today, we had 131. Last week, I think we were like 122 or 120, somewhere in that number, around that number. So inventory depends on where you are, maybe increasing, decreasing a little bit. But what I can tell you is that in listing homes lately and having a conversation with an agent today on an offer that my buyer made on their property, and something she said to me, and it made me think, is I'm starting to see a lot of really crappy offers being made. A lot of crappy offers in the sense that the agents that are putting them together are doing an awful job at telling the story with regards, and it sounds probably weird saying it that direction. I mean, saying it that way, but there's a way to present an offer and show your client in the best light, right? And that's making a presentable offer, written well, so on and so forth, explaining the details of it and all of that good stuff. I had a property that had put in escrow about 2 weeks ago now. And every offer we received on that thing has just been awful. The way they were written, the way they were structured, the type of financing that was coming in on it, it was just, it wasn't a good deal. And same thing, the agent said to me on an offer. In fact, it's the seller's property that she's buying. It's the one she's selling is the ones I had issue on, and the one she's buying, that agent told me today, like, every offer was awful except for your offer. We had offers higher than yours. They just weren't well written. So, I don't know if that's a sign that there's just less qualified people looking at the moment, or affordability in certain price ranges and people are stretching. I don't know what it is, but I can tell you that if you're having your agent represent you in writing offers, make sure they know what they're doing, because us as agents, when we're looking at offers, that's things that we're talking about with our clients, right? We're having that conversation that, hey, look, they offered this, but the offer is poorly written. There's many things missing, and it's a reflection not only on the agent but on the client. Even though the client didn't write the offer, it's a reflection on them, just because it could be a better story, right? It could be better written to explain exactly what's going on.
So Jeb, why don't let's go a little detail on that. So there's two pieces of it. There's our part, the pre-approval package that we put together for you to put with your offer. There's the part that you create, and then how you put it all together and how you deliver it and how you follow up on it. So what is important? What does a professional offer coming from a good agent look like in terms of just details in the contract, cover letter explaining things? What are the things that you're looking for?
I mean, well, let me say this. When I write an offer, it's structured something like this. We have a cover letter, right, explaining the not necessarily the client, but a little bit about, the offer, or the client making the offer. I'm explaining what they're receiving in that package, right? They're receiving the residential purchase agreement. They're receiving the disclosures. They're receiving a pre-approval package, which includes credit, DU. They're receiving proof of funds. If there's a contingency on that property, maybe they're selling another home, I'm including a copy of the escrow instructions on that property. If there's been contingencies released, I'm providing as much documentation as I physically can for that agent to be able to make a decision without ever contacting me, right? To feel like they have a solid idea of who that buyer is without ever reaching out to me. But in addition to that, I'm following up to make sure they've received it. I'm copying my lender. In many cases, that's you on the deal. You're following up to make sure that agent understands that. And I'll be honest, half the agents out there have no idea what they're even looking at, right? So it means very little to actually put that full package together. But when it does matter is when the agent on the other side understands it, like today, and told me the package was well put together. It was well written. She trusted me. She doesn't even know me, but she trusts me based on the way that the package was put together. And that is it equally as important in this market as what you offer in many cases, because that's when it's competitive, how do you stand out? You stand out by being a professional, and doing that sort of thing. But on your side, right, what would I require from you? Yeah, go ahead.
Think of this. Like I follow up with what we have a saying here in the office, a couple sayings, but one of them is how you do anything is how you do everything. So you putting that awesome package together, communicating directly and clearly, and then following up, you're just demonstrating this is what a transaction with me is going to look like.
Right.
And that's really what we're doing when we follow up also. Hey, if you accept Jeb's offer, we're handling the financing. You and I were talking earlier today. The biggest thorn in a real estate transaction is a shitty lender. Just a bad realtor can be problematic, but no one can be as bad as a lender. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jeb, but I would say really a bad lender is the biggest fly in the ointment of a successful real estate transaction. So we want to let them know we know what we're talking about. We communicate. We don't hide behind our phone. We can use email effectively, and we put a package together. So when we put the package together and Jeb puts it into that offer package, it's a clear and direct pre-approval letter that lets them know what we have, what we've done, and what is still needed to close. DU findings that show what the debt to income ratio is, cash to close, all that. If Jeb doesn't already have the proof of funds, we're going to provide proof of funds, proof of credit scores, anything that they could have a question about. I don't want them to ask the question. I want to answer it before they do. So Jeb and several other realtors will send me DU findings on the offers they're getting. So hey, will you take a look at this DU and tell me? DU is desktop underwriter. It's Fannie Mae's automated underwriting system. And I tell them a couple things. It's garbage in, garbage out, but it also can hide. Like we don't have any proof of any of the things. I can put in anything I want. I can say my client makes $1 million a year. It's not verified. There's nothing in the background. You're taking it on faith that we do it correctly. So really, when Jeb sends the DU findings over, what I want to look at is, does it look like they did their job correctly? So when we've got two borrowers and both of them magically make a salary that's a round number, like $5,000 a month, $4,500 a month, That is all incredibly rare that someone has a salary that's a round number like that. Income always comes out to a funky number. Same thing with bank balances. If they have 10,000 in this bank account and 20,000 in this bank account, very rarely do I ever see
Right.
round numbers like that. So it's telling you that they didn't actually review this documentation, or if they did, they didn't bother to update their system before they ran their DU. We want to look through and see, you'll see omitted debts, and you're like, why are we omitting that? Do we have proof? What is it? And they might not. And then the most important thing, when you get to the end of those DU findings, there's a summary and it says, here's what the payment is, here's what the ratios are, here's what the cash to close is, and here's how much cash they actually have, or how much assets they have. And you would be stunned how many times we go through and review that. Jeb knows loans, so he's not going to send one over to me that looks this bad, but I'll get them from agents that don't really know loans. And you look at it and it says, hey, they need 70 or $18,700 to close. They're $5,000 short. Like, really? You couldn't even review the DU findings before you send them out for someone else to make a decision on your client. So those details are what we're trying to get through. So it's how you do anything is how you do everything, and do it the same way every time. Do it right, and do it right every time.
No, agreed. So that was a long intro, guys. But I feel like there's some useful information in there if you're buying or going through the process or considering it in the near future. We do have a super chat, which we're going to hit up first, and then we'll get to the top of the questions there. So Joey Crack, our boy, did not get the house. Feels like the offer was used as leverage. How long do sellers take to respond, and how long should I leave an offer outstanding without getting a response? So could that be the case? Could an offer be used as leverage? Absolutely. There is definitely a gap in the housing industry in the way things are presented, in my opinion. Um, you know, I've always said I think you could create a system where all offers have to be uploaded so that the seller is able to verify all the information would be absolutely genius in this business. I mean, it really would. The fact that we can still present offers in paper and whatever without some verification, I mean, real verification that something was received or presented or whatever is a bit asinine. I mean, quite frankly, depending, showing where we are in this day and age with how easy technology is it accessed and what have you. But the reality is, could one be used as leverage? Absolutely. And in many cases, I'm sure it's done out there that people present one offer and use that to get other offers higher and what have you. But different conversation there. But how long should you leave one unattended? I guess that's something that I talk to clients to all the time. I say, hey, listen, your offer expires in 3 days. Now, if the seller comes back on day 4 and decides to accept it, are you going to tell them, no, I don't, my offer expired. I don't want that house anymore? Chances are you're not, right? If you liked it 3 days ago, chances are you're going to like it when and if they accept your offer on the 4th day. So I would tell you, no need to have your offer necessarily expire unless you're trying to play hardball, or unless maybe you have another offer on the table and you're going to move forward with X if Y doesn't happen or what have you. Then in that case, but if it's the only offer you have out at the moment and you're still looking, what's the harm in letting it just run, right? I mean, in fact, I went into escrow on a property last Friday, I believe. And the seller, the buyer rather, ended up backing out, got cold feet, decided not to move forward. I still had the original offers, which I had already talked to the buyers on those properties, or their agents rather, and told them, hey, look, we accepted an offer. Can I keep yours as backup? Yes, whatever. Listen, as soon as we accepted the offer, within 24 hours, that buyer canceled. I called the agent back up. I said, hey, listen, buyer backed out. Are you still interested in being the backup and actually being our actual offer now? And they said, yeah, we accepted their original contract, right, with a counter offer. So they didn't have to write a new offer. It was still a valid contract in that regard, because they never canceled it, if you will. So I don't think there's any harm in letting it roll, unless you got something else that you're trying to strategize or execute, based on how that one plays out.
And think about this also. It's not that they're going, oh, I don't want to get back to these people. In most situations, the quality homes are selling fairly quickly. So you put the house on the market on Friday. Is that a typical time to list your property, Jeb? Friday?
I go Wednesdays.
So
But nevertheless,
some point later in the week, and you're
right.
going to have your open house over the weekend. Unless someone blows you away, and even with the home you just sold, someone did blow you away. What's the number? They asked, what's the number to never put it on the market? And you put it on the market anyways because you have to let the market, in a hot market like this, set the
Right.
value. So now you want to show it Saturday, you want to show it Sunday, you have your open house. Now everyone doesn't run back to their computer and write an offer up immediately. So offers are going to come in Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and you'll communicate and let everyone know, hey, we're going to cut it off at some point. But if multiple offers are still coming in and you know more offers are going to come in, it's just supply and demand. As a seller, you're not going to go, hey, let's just accept one real quick before we see all of the 20 offers that are going to come in. And that can be an exaggeration. But just a long way of saying, Joey, it could have just been, it's a desirable property. Offers are still trickling in, and as a seller they want to make sure they're not leaving any money on the table. So it goes back to what Jeb started this conversation with, is are they communicating, are they being professional, are they presenting it well? Because in that case, realtors should be reaching back out to everyone, hey, we are still getting a volume of offers coming in, we are looking to accept an offer Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. Is that cool with your clients? Are you still in? Is that about right, Jeb?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, and I'm not one of the agents. Lights back on, finally paid the bill, finally went through. No, I'm not one of those agents that drags things on, right? I mean, it's, hey, listen, we're going through the weekend. Monday, we're making a decision. We're not dragging this thing on for 5 days trying to get 50 offers. That doesn't benefit anyone. It's a pain in the butt for the seller. It's a pain in the butt for myself. It's a pain in the butt for the buyers to have to go through that and actually wait, right? I mean, the anticipation of making an offer, quite frankly, I mean, I haven't purchased a property since 2012. Now, I'm in the market at the moment, looking at some stuff, what have you, but haven't physically had an offer out since 2012. And I forgot, the anxiety, the emotion of submitting an offer and waiting, that waiting period of how, are we going to get accepted? Are we going to get a counter? What are we going to get? And, the longer that drags on, the worse it gets. So I try to be remindful, is that a word? I try to remind myself of that when, going through the process, hey, listen, let's get back to people quickly because that's how you would want to be communicated with if you were making offers. But let's move on. So let's see. Javier Vidana is in here. He's asking, how do you drink? What's the best way to drink coffee? Well, Josh doesn't drink it at all. So that's
not at all is the correct answer.
Feels like K-cups are kind of crappy. I'm a K-cup guy. K-cups are easy. I'm all about instant gratification, man. Right there. Push a button, get coffee.
Javier's an environmentalist. He doesn't want to fill up the landfills with little tiny plastic cups.
That's what it is. Good on him. So I reached out to Javier today to see if he wanted to be on here on a Wednesday. So we're gonna have a show here with a Wednesday with some other peeps. We're gonna add some people to the show. So in the comments, let us know who you want to be on here. How's that? Let's see. Michael DeRee has a question. Michael is one of our regulars here. This is an interesting question. We were told our lot, I guess it's not really a question, more of a comment, but it's going to go into a question because I'm going to ask one. Told our new build needs a variance. City did not grant it. Now, no way. Wow. I'm going to start over. We were told our lot on our new build needs a variance. City did not grant it. No, we have to pick a different lot 8 more months out from being built. Not a happy camper, but best places around, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so backstory here. Michael's building a house in Texas. And I'm assuming there was a date sooner than 8 months at some point. Now, sounds like the lot that he had picked to build on, the builder can't actually build on it because the city has to do a variance on it, which seems odd to me that they wouldn't have had that completed prior to actually building the community. In fact, I went to a city council meeting last night that they're building a development here in Huntington Beach. They're taking an old school and redeveloping it and building 85 homes there. Hasn't been a school for the last couple of years, but the school district is actually selling it to a builder who's going to develop it. And part of that project being approved is they needed a variance. They needed a variance to change it from residential. I forget what the other part of it was, but it was basically being used as kind of like a park, if you will, low density or something. And they wanted to change it to completely residential. And part of the project being built was that the city had to approve it and already change that variance prior to the construction ever starting. So that's why I'm surprised is that, in Texas or wherever you are, that they're allowing a community to be built for whatever reason and not having that variance completed prior to that happening. But yeah, that's the problem with new construction, right? That contract, as we've mentioned many, many times on the show, very much favors the seller. Any other situation where you change a contract like that, that pushes out your closing date that much, chances are you'd have a little leg to stand on with getting some things done. In this case, you probably don't because, they have control based on the contract that they've written to protect themselves. Josh, anything you want to add on that before we move along?
No, other than Michael's had a hard time of it.
Yeah, no. And he's been a member for 4 months. Look at that. We're going to click that. How do I even get to that? I don't even know. It didn't come up on this side, but I'm going to click it when it comes up. Anyway, Cosmon Martinez. I have a question. How low can you negotiate if you're buying a house and your loan is FHA? I think it's less about the loan and more about negotiating the property. Right now, in some cases, you might have a harder time getting an FHA loan accepted if you're competing against, conventional offers and it's a multiple offer situation and what have you. But that aside, if you're the only offer, for example, let's just pretend you're the only offer and you're coming in with an FHA loan, it's not really about the loan so much as to how much you can negotiate a property lower, right? It's more about your negotiating skills for one, and finding out what the property's worth, what the seller's willing to accept, and what you're willing to offer. Now, there's a lot of variables there, right? I just threw a lot at you, but I would take the loan out of it when thinking about what you're going to offer, right? That really should have no bearing, in my opinion, on the price that you're offering. It just more comes down, can you actually get an FHA loan accepted if you're competing against other people? Anything you want to add on that one, Josh?
No, it just other than that last fact, is it harder to get an offer accepted with FHA financing in a competitive bidding situation? Yes, it is. Is it impossible? No,
absolutely not. Right?
We do them every month. A couple people we get, and they may have a harder time of it, but they are still able to get into homes. So if you have to go FHA, do not accept a realtor or anyone else telling you, "Oh, I can't help you. You're never going to get an offer accepted."
Nope, absolutely. Pixel Porsche. First time Porsche. What the hell am I talking about? Wow.
And Jeb's been to the Porsche driving experience here in Carson. So
at one point I owned one and I still can't pronounce it. First time meeting a real estate agent. She did not explain a thing about the current market. I'm laughing at myself. I am awful at English. And new buyers, and didn't seem to understand the area with 25 years of experience. Red flag, question mark. I would say no, unless you ask the question directly, then maybe they didn't feel the need to necessarily explain the current market. Conversations can go a lot of directions, and before you know it, you've forgotten about some of the things you were going to talk about. It's happened to me. I make a point of talking about the current market, not to scare people off or whatever, but just really to provide some clarity on what's actually going on and more to set proper expectations of what to expect. Now, I tell them, hey, it can go one of a lot of ways, right? We can make one offer, it gets accepted immediately, great. Or we could be in the process for a couple of months, depending on, how we approach it, how you make offers, the competition, so on and so forth. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's a red flag, but it's probably a conversation that you want to have. Ask them how they're approaching the market. What do they see happening in the market at the moment? What do they expect to happen over the next couple of months? Now, their crystal ball looks a lot like mine, probably, where it's a bit foggy. But regardless of really knowing the direction of the market, they should have some expectation, right? I don't know where the market's going for certain, but I have a thought, right? A theory based on current environment. And it's something I often talk about, but they should be able to have an opinion, if you will. And from there, you can make a decision on whether or not they're a good fit. Josh, here's one for you. Lauren is asking, is it true that you can purchase a duplex with 3.5% down as a primary residence as long as you live in it for at least 1 year in California, or can you do that anywhere?
Yeah, no geographic limitation on it. It's simply an FHA loan. FHA 3.5% down. And we've talked about this before. FHA loans can be really, really good, but when looking at 2 units, especially, they're particularly good because if you do a conventional loan, you have to put a much larger down payment. So even if you're owner occupying, so 2 units, 3.5% down, FHA is a great option. We get a lot of inquiries from smart first-time buyers saying, hey, we've never bought, we want to use FHA to buy 3 to 4 units. So something I always like to point out, so no one asked the question, but I'll answer it and throw it out here. In high cost areas, FHA on 3 to 4 units, but not on 1 and 2, has a rule, a test. It's called the self-sufficiency test. So if you're buying a 4-unit building and every unit will rent for $1,000 each, so $4,000 total rent, 75% of the market rents have to exceed your monthly payment. So in that instance, we have $4,000 of rent, $3,000 is 75% of that to allow for vacancy and expenses. And that $3,000 has to exceed the monthly payment. So in a lot of areas around the country where rents are high relative to prices, that is not a problem at all. For us here in Southern California, Orange, LA, San Diego, and even the more expensive parts of the Inland Empire, you can't get one to pass the self-sufficiency test. So while FHA does allow a 3.5% down on a purchase on 3 and 4 units, in practical purposes in high cost areas where the rents vastly exceed, or the prices vastly exceed the rents, you're just not able to use it.
There you go. Eli said he got his arm sawed off at the elbow last year, and they installed titanium parts. So hopefully, Josh, they'll do something like that for you, bud.
He's getting better parts. I just get chrome. I get a chrome ball on the top.
You get some brushed silver,
Yeah.
nickel plated. Yeah. Grace is back with us. So thanks for being here, Grace. Looks like you updated your profile picture there. Looks like a Giants hat. I don't know. Giants hat? I think she's up in Northern California, so that makes sense.
How's the Giant season going?
He went there.
I'm not a Dodger fan. I just thought I'd ask.
He went there. Anyway, Codus is asking if inventory is coming back, would this actually cool down the market? Yeah, I mean, yes, absolutely. But it's got to come back at a rate that it starts to build some supply. If it's just coming back at enough to meet the buyer demand, not a lot changes. It's got to actually build where, you start seeing the numbers continually go up, week over week, month over month, to a point where things start to slow down. And until that happens, it's not really that impactful. If properties come into the market and it just gets swallowed up by buyers, within a couple of weeks, no real impact there. Let's see here. Jennifer is with us. Jennifer is our moderator here. Jennifer will kick you out if you're not nice, but she's asking you to like and subscribe. So please do that. We appreciate you being here. Michael just threw in something there. Let's see here. Got a couple. Amandeep gave us $5 super chat. So thank you, Amandeep. And Michael saying the one good thing about the builder pushing out our new build 8 more months is we are building more equity, contracted at $240, today's cost $256. So congrats there. No, good stuff. As long as you're okay with it, then it's all good, right? But you could probably make a stink about it and probably get a little bit more. So you may push it just a little bit and just see what you can get. Just don't back out. Let's see here. See anything there, Josh?
Well, we have a version of the question that comes up every now and again. So do I take advantage of the low interest rates, or do I wait to buy? We're still obviously of the mind here that home prices are going to continue higher. Don't necessarily agree with Goldman Sachs that we're going to see a 16% increase next year, or even Zillow at 11%. I'm hopeful that we see a mid-single digits increase in value. So depending on where you're at, $300,000 home with a 5% increase, it's $15,000 more expensive. $600,000 house is $30,000 more expensive. So interest rates are going to be favorable and will continue the long-term downtrend. We have a question here, Tacitus 1979 says, so negative interest rates like Japan? Not necessarily negative interest rates like Japan, but continued downward pressure on interest rates because of slow growth, because of the overhang of government debt. I know many of our politicians have bought into this myth that you can just finance anything in perpetuity without negative consequences, but what we're doing is sacrificing growth and future growth. So I know our millennials love to say how we're screwing up the world, but if they really want to fight, they should fight against politicians borrowing to give away entitlements that we can't afford, that are stealing future growth, and will keep rates low and asset prices high. And who does that help? It helps older people that own assets. It certainly doesn't help the younger folks that are eventually going to have to repay that debt without the benefit of growing assets in a bubble market.
There you go. Well said. Well said. Let's see here. Trying to find some questions. Let's see.
Here's a
Al
good one.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Let's do that. But I got a good one after that.
So Al Bundy says, how often do flippers get permits for a remodel? Do they all or only some of the permits? Big deal typically. Here's the thing. I would say some flippers get permits, some don't. And I think it depends on what they do in the property a lot of times. It's hard to say, right? I think the people that are truly good contractors are probably going through the permitting process. Now, if you're just doing, in California, for example, if you change a water heater, you're supposed to get a permit for it. I think a lot of people probably just change the water heater without getting a permit. Me personally have done it. Installing air conditioning, that sort of thing. I think that's probably a less permitted process than structural modifications in a property, right? Removing a wall, adding a beam, that sort of thing should absolutely be permitted in many ways. I see a lot of them. I've come across houses that I know for a fact were not permitted in remodels. You can tell from the cracking along, where the wall used to be and so on and so forth. So it's hard to say. I can't give you a percentage, but what I can tell you is that California, most of the cities here have things, the permitting process online is pretty easy to pull up what has been permitted on a property. In fact, Huntington Beach, the one good thing that happened through the pandemic is that they put everything online. So now it is very easy to access a property, see what was permitted, when it was done, so on and so forth. So, I would tell you, if you're buying a property that has been flipped, your agent should be looking up those permits, even if it hasn't been flipped. Just seeing what's permitted and what's not is not a bad thing to do. And if you're planning on flipping property, it's one of those things that, what are you willing to risk? Right. If you do a full kitchen remodel, do electrical or showers or whatever, and you don't get, I can't even think of what it's called. The tar, Josh, what hot mop. If you go through the process and you don't get any of that permitted, they could technically come in there, if they find out, and ask you to rip it all out to make sure that it's done correctly. So what are you willing to potentially risk with a remodel if you're flipping a property and what have you? So
I would say here from experience, there's two types of people that don't get permits, and we've talked about the bell curve before. The people in the middle, who are not super experienced and likely a little nervous and want to follow all the rules, are likely to go and get everything permitted. The guy on the low end, who's cutting corners and trying to save costs on every level, is probably not going to get permits and probably not going to do it right. I can also say that I know people on the high end that flip a lot of houses, that work with contractors repeatedly, that they know and trust, that know that the work is going to get done. Permits cost time and money. So if you know a home has been flipped, it's that much more important to have a good inspection. They're not doing a destructive inspection where they're tearing things apart. So certainly things can get closed up in the wall and look great from the outside. So the permitting process prevents that. There's permits, there's inspections at every step of the way to prevent anything from getting done improperly and then sealed up in a wall. You're not going to have that if you don't have permits, even if everything looks like it was done from a workmanlike manner. But I can also say, I don't know anyone who's cutting corners and then doing nice finish work. So if that helps in terms of what you're looking at.
No, absolutely. Since Amon Deep gave me $5, I'm going to read he wants me to stop making videos to scare people into buying houses. So that's why I do it. For people to give me $5.
You're very scary.
Yeah, and that's my goal, is just to buy, because you buying a house in Oklahoma benefits me. In just in many ways. I don't even know if you're in Oklahoma. I'm just putting it out there that, I don't make videos to scare people. I try to actually do the opposite. I try to provide some value as to what's actually happening in the market versus a bunch of these clowns. Yep, I said clowns out there at the moment pitching crash videos every day, and not understanding the fundamentals of the market. But, my track record at the moment can stand up pretty much against anyone's out there over the last couple of years with regards to what's going to happen. So we'll leave it at that. Joey's just giving us money. Can you use your EMD towards closing costs? What's the difference between EMD and good faith deposit? So EMD, good faith deposit is the same thing. Earnest money deposit, good faith deposit, exact same thing. Can you use it towards closing costs? Absolutely. It just comes out of the total at the end. So whatever you put up front, good faith, earnest money, comes out of your closing cost down payment that's required at the end. It's not in addition to, it's part of those costs. So hopefully that answers your question. Again, thanks for the super chat. I bought Josh lunch today, as well as someone else. We spent $40. So my goal here with the show is to make
cover
back
lunch,
the money that Josh spent for eating out. But anyway, no, I'm kidding.
I got a simple burger. Jeb got a fancy chicken caprese sandwich. So mine was low budget. His was high rent over there.
Bro, you said you had a good question a minute ago. What was it?
Right here, our friend South Jersey, Matt, says, I've owned my home for 10 years and equity has risen. Can I now get rid of my FHA PMI? So I believe those
2012, I think.
Went permanent just about 10 years ago. So if you want, shoot us an email with it and figure out exactly when you bought the property, and we can get you the date of when they changed it to be permanent, because it was right around 10 years ago. So if you truly owned it 10 years since 2011 or so, I think you're okay. I think it was 12 or 13 when they went permanent. So what we're talking about here is if you do a minimum down 30-year FHA mortgage, that mortgage insurance is on there for the life of the loan. Freaks people out. A lot of times say, I'm not doing FHA. It has mortgage insurance on there for the life of the loan. Well, the reality was it was going to be on there until you amortize down to about 78% of the original loan amount before, which was 11 to 12 years, and you could never petition to get rid of it. Most people don't stay in an FHA loan for the life of their loan. They'll refinance. We talked about this a million times, that we're in a 40-year bull market in bonds and lower interest rates. So no one stays in an FHA loan that long. Once you get the equity, you'll get out of it. So if you've been in that loan for 10 years, the rate's probably not great relative to current terms. So depending on what the loan balance is, you may want to look at switching out to a conventional loan, even if your loan was originated prior to the change making FHA mortgage insurance permanent.
No, good stuff. Good stuff. Let's see what we got here. I just saw a good question. I got an email that I'm going to address on air too, because they sent me something and we're gonna look at it. Oh, here we go. Logical thinker, Josh. Other than supply side issues contributing to inflation, what effect do you think the trillions of dollars in money printing has had on inflation? The potential trillions more coming. So again, this is essentially in the article that we just kind of addressed here, or read rather. Yeah, go for it. You kind of talked about it a minute ago.
So yeah, the biggest issue is money supply itself doesn't do anything without that money moving around. Velocity of money, that money moving through the economy, is at a 25, 30-year low. It's 50% lower than it was in 1997. So we're talking in 24 years, and that's largely due to the massive expansion of government debt. So the reason why we can have this debt and not have the huge amount of inflation that everyone always believed or thought we would have is because the money's not moving around the economy. Banks aren't lending, consumers aren't spending. If you look at where the consumer was prior to 2008, before the last financial crisis, and how much they've deleveraged and paid down debt and stopped spending, yes, we all know the crazy friend or neighbor or family member that spends way too much money. But for the most part, you don't see the profligate spending that we had back in 2003, 2004, 2005. So I think you're right that it's there and it's not going away, but I also don't think we're going to see an uptick in velocity of money, and because of that, we're not seeing inflation and won't, and velocity will continue to tick down, which will lead to lower growth.
There you go. Grace, can you guys briefly explain FICO 8 versus 9? If so, which one would a lender use, Josh?
That's a $47 million question. I don't even look. It's dictated by Fannie and Freddie. So when we order a mortgage credit report, it tells you, it just gives you the scores. If I look into a report, I can pull that up while we're talking here. It'll tell us later in the report what the model is. But in essence, it's all the same data goes in. They're just slightly different models. There's 50 or 60 different models that are used for different things. Auto lenders want something different in their model. Credit cards, something different in their model. Solar companies want something different in their model. So the only thing that matters is when you talk to a mortgage lender and they pull your credit score, what it looks like. So people say, but my Vantage is a billion points higher, but my FICO 7 is this. Doesn't matter. What your mortgage lender is pulling is what we're going to use.
All right. Sophie is saying that she's been watching videos for months. She just subscribed. Appreciate you doing that, Sophie. We appreciate you being here as well. And yes, that was Javier. He's in there clowning around. He's gone now, but you asked that question as well. Al is asking, do you provide the actual DTI to the seller's agent, or do they have to ask for it? So I wouldn't say it's provided on every deal. Some people don't send me desktop underwriting findings. In some cases, I don't really care about the findings. And in some cases, there is no DU findings based on the type of loan that they're actually doing. So, if the DU findings come over, the DTI is on there. So that's, we would be provided. I try to provide them on every single one of my clients, just to show, hey, look, my lender knows the process. They've done their job. Gives you, again, as much information as they need in order to make a decision, but it's not provided in every case. And in some cases, when they don't provide it, I do ask for it. In other cases, I don't. It just really depends on everything going on. If somebody comes in and they show me they have a ton of money in the bank and they're only putting a portion of it down, I'm probably less concerned about their DTI because I know, financially they're okay. They could put more money down if needed, and that could change the DTI, so on and so forth. Let's see here. Dan Draper, can you use an FHA loan to buy a home in a different state based on your...
Whoa. Hold on.
Don Draper.
Did you just call him Dan Draper?
Bro, I didn't know he was coming in as Don. I mean, yeah, Don's in here.
Don Draper is asking questions. He's going to run some ads.
Well, that's why I just immediately saw Dan. I mean, you also have to understand that I have this screen put down to I can't see anything other than I can't see the icons really. So I don't know, I know they're on there, but I don't know what they look like. So
more super chats so Jeb can get a bigger screen to look at.
No. I actually have a bigger screen on the ground that I don't want to put up here. But anyway, Don Draper, can you use an FHA loan to buy a home in a different state based on your income in California? Josh.
Absolutely. So he asked this question twice. He broke your rule, and the follow-up on the first one is, if so, what's the best loan type to use? So the giant question here is, are you buying an investment property? If you're buying an investment property out of state, by all means, your income in the state of California can be used. If you're buying a residence in Minnesota and you make your money in California, we have to show why that's not going to change. If an employer says, Don writes ads for us here in New York City, but we're okay with him working remotely in Minnesota, and he will keep his same salary of X per month per year, we're absolutely fine using that income. But if you have an income and you're trying to buy out of state and then go get a job when you get there, it's not going to fly. We're going to have to be able to explain why your income is going to be able to travel with you, which, believe it or not, post-COVID is not that uncommon. We probably do a couple loans a year where someone is moving to another area and keeping their job.
All right. I got another. Michael's coming in with the hot questions tonight. He's got another one here in just a minute. But can you tell me why lenders use the lower of two credit scores when a married couple applies for a home mortgage? So if you're new to the process of buying a house, you typically have three credit scores, right? You have Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian, right? You have three credit scores. They usually take the middle of those three scores. It's not an average. It's the middle. So if you have a 700, a 650 and a 600, they're going to take the 650. Well, in that case, it averages, but 650, right? And then if there's two borrowers, they're going to do the same thing. And then they're going to take the lower of those two, right? That's what they're going to base the interest rate on, the lower of those two people. Josh, why are they doing that?
I'd love to say there's some great scientific reason for it, but Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and the way they set their loan level price adjustments, meaning how that credit score impacts things, there is no rhyme or reason to it. So in specific answer to your question, it's what's the greatest level of risk. It's the person with the lowest credit score in there. So if they're just measuring risk and trying to price it appropriately, they're going to look at who presents the greatest level of risk. The interesting thing is, well, it's not even all that interesting. On the mortgage insurance side, they'll get both scores, but it's sort of offset. There's less risk when there's two borrowers. So mortgage insurers take that into account when they're looking at your risk and pricing it. Mortgage lenders don't. They don't go, hey, we've got two, this is better than one. So even though one has a slightly lower score, it's just they're going to go to the lowest one, and that's across the board: Fannie, Freddie, FHA, VA, conventional. The only lenders that do it any other way, I do know a few lenders that do home equity lines of credit, and they'll use the primary wage earner, and that would be really the only logic of saying, hey, who makes the most money, and let's assume that they have the greatest weight on the family finances. But for your major loans, it's not going to be anything other than the lower of two.
All right. Just because I just want to throw him up here again, Amon Deep is telling me to still stop. So Amon, I will stop telling people to buy houses if you give me another $5 super chat. Maybe I'll do it. I don't know. Let's see. How much money do you have, Amon Deep? Let's talk.
Based off of Amandeep's name, it's clear that there's definitely the potential that English is not his first language, so we're not going to go here. But if you want to challenge someone's intellectual argument, you probably should phrase it in a way that's comprehensible. And his first message he was very clear with what he was saying. So I don't know if he's typing really quickly on his phone keyboard, because we understood the first one. I can't even follow along with this. And just so everyone's aware, I've never seen Jeb pick up his phone and start calling and berating people into buying homes. He answers the phone of people wanting to buy homes.
No, you have to buy a home, Josh.
it's your time, bro.
This is it. I have a house to sell. You need to buy it. That's what I tell people when they call. I don't even give them a chance to offer it. I actually send them the offer to sign. Like, you don't even have a choice of what you pay. You overpay. That's what you do. Matt, the mortgage guy, came in and said, you got to find a local Temple coffee and brew in your office. Minimum 5 cups a day, bro. You must be jacked. So I drink a cup of coffee in the morning. So I get up early. I get up at like 4 o'clock. So I go to the gym early. I take pre-workout on the way to the gym, which has caffeine in it, right? Come back home, have a cup of coffee. I'm good. And most of the time, I don't do anything else. Today, on live weeks, I do a Bang Energy, because I'm trying to bring it. No, not really. Because, I don't know. I just need my energy.
Because he's been up since 4 a.m. and he's trying to not fall asleep before his 7
typically this would be my
bedtime.
bedtime, people. So I'm trying to stay awake. So I don't really drink a lot of caffeine. But 5 cups a day, I'm pretty sure I'd be running around this place like a madman. You'd have no idea what was going on. Let's see here.
So there was a question here that someone misunderstood the answer to the last question. Isn't VA different? They base it on the middle. All lenders will use the middle of an individual score. If there's more than one individual on the file, they're going to use the lowest middle score. So we weren't saying that you're going to use the lowest score of your 3. You're going to use the mid, and then you're going to use the lowest borrower's mid score.
All right. Let's see here. The bit. Can a condo be sold without a paid assessment letter? I'm not sure what we're referring to with a paid assessment letter. If you want to explain it in a little bit more detail, I will be happy to address it. I've never heard, an assessment letter. I'm not sure what we're talking about, but put it in there if you're still here, and we'll be happy to address it. Oh boy. I just keep seeing the name and I just want to poke. I just want to poke the bear. Let's see, guys, they're building new homes by one of my houses. Would that affect the value, negative or positive? I think it depends on what they're building and the price point in which they're building, right? If they come in your neighborhood, for example, and they're building a similar house to your house, but it's priced the same and or less than what you think your house is worth, it's probably not going to help you out. But if they're coming, that would be a negative, right? If they're coming in your neighborhood and building homes similar square footage, maybe even a little bit bigger, but they're going for considerably more, that's probably a positive thing. I think it depends on what they're building, the quality of the construction. There's obviously a lot of things going on there. Are there amenities and, parks, anything that's coming along with that construction? But typically it would probably add value in many cases. It just, again, it comes down to what it is that they're actually they're building. All right, Josh, go ahead, buddy.
Got a good one here.
All right.
Greg wants to know, what are the mechanics of how do you buy a home when your down payment is in your current home's equity?
There's a couple of ways, right? One is you could refinance. You could pull that cash out, have the cash on hand, buy a property at that point, right? You would have the money for the down payment. Clearly, you'd have to qualify for both mortgages in that case if you did that. The second way is that you could, sell your property, put your property on the market with the contract saying that it's contingent upon you closing on that property at the same time, right? A contingent close, both happening at the same time. That way your equity basically transfers from property A to property B through the close of escrow. A little bit more tricky in this market. It's pretty common. In fact, I'm doing one at the moment where that's taking place. So pretty normal, but it could be a little bit more difficult to get your offer accepted in that way, just because, there are potential issues with that property falling through. If something happens to that down leg, it would affect the purchase of the new property, which, sellers might be a little apprehensive to accept something like that, if they have multiple offers. The next option, or I guess the last option, would be you could sell your property with the idea, that you're going to do a rent back for a certain period of time while you find the next property. The caveat there is that if you don't find a property within the time that you've allotted, you're going to be kind of in a bad position, right? In a pickle, if you will. So I think that addresses your question. Now, if the question is that you plan on keeping the property to begin with and you weren't ever going to sell it and the equity is just there and you want to buy something else, really the only way is to do some sort of bridge loan and or refinance and pull the cash out of that property. So I saw another one, Josh, and I was going to click on it and I lost it here.
Well, we had a good little run here. We got King Shep says, is an FHA 203K loan worth doing as a buyer? They're in Connecticut. So it really doesn't matter where you are. The FHA 203K loan is a great product. It allows you to acquire your home and finance renovations at the same time. They get difficult in the current market because we talked earlier in the show that with an FHA mortgage, some sellers are less likely in a competitive bidding situation to select an FHA mortgage. Well, a 203K is a specific type of FHA mortgage that is a little bit more difficult and will take a little bit longer to process. So that would be the only downside to it. So without going too far down the rabbit hole of the 203K, it's a great program. If you can get an offer accepted using it and you find a home that needs some renovations and upgrades, it's a great way to be able to buy sort of an aged home and bring it up to the standards of what you'd like.
No, good stuff. Good stuff. We got a good question here. Christine is asking, when is a good time to include an escalation clause into your offer for a single family home? If included, how much should it be? 1,000, 5,000. So let's address what an escalation clause is initially so that, if you're not familiar with it, you have an understanding of what we're talking about here. An escalation clause would allow you to make an offer on a property and have your property escalate to a certain amount by a certain amount above any other offers that come in, right? And I know that's confusing, but let's give an example. Say you make $100,000 offer on a property. You can say in that offer, hey, purchase price is $100,000, but my client is willing to offer $1,000 higher than the highest offer, up to 110,000. That way, if somebody offered 105,000, your offer would immediately go to 106. But what happens is if you get somebody offering higher than 110, essentially you've exceeded your escalation clause. Therefore, your offer wouldn't escalate anymore. Now, but you have people asking, well, why would you pay more than a property's worth? Why would you do an escalation clause? All of these things. All are reasonable and fair questions, but what you have to understand in a competitive market, when you have multiple offers, sometimes you have to do things in order to help your offer stand out. And if you really want the property an escalation clause is a good way to put your best foot forward without having to necessarily throw your best offer out there to begin with. Now, we've talked about this in the past. Unfortunately, a lot of agents don't understand escalation clauses. So if you're making an escalation clause, make sure, for one, that your agent truly understands it, how to write it. But secondly, they need to verify that the listing agent of that property understands how it works and that it's not overlooked in the offer, right? Because there's not really a clear way to put it in the offer without writing it into one of the section, the remarks, at least here in the state of California. So it needs to be understood on that there is an escalation clause and to what price it's going to. But to answer your question, when is a good time? When do you really want the property? I have some clients who do it every single offer. I have some people that don't want to do it at all. So you've got to decide what's right for you. But when you say single family home, I would say you could do it on a condo, townhome, any property you're making an offer on. It's a good way to stand out, right? Because if you're willing, for example, we'll go back to our example a moment ago. If you're willing to offer 110 for that property, if that's your highest and best, but you don't necessarily want to throw that out there and you just want to test the water. You might test the water with 100,000, right? Because that could end up what gets accepted, right? Instead of throwing the 110 out there and paying a little bit more. In my experience, there's two things that happen when a buyer makes an offer. If their offer doesn't get accepted and they find out it's sold for $1,000 more, most of the time the buyer thinks to themselves, well, I would have paid $1,000 more. Or in the case that their offer gets accepted on the first try, at 110,000 or whatever, they often wonder, well, could I have gotten it for less? And so that escalation clause allows you to kind of get the best of both worlds as long as everyone understands it. And I've written escalation clauses in contracts that we never reached the escalation. In fact, we made an offer, we put the escalation clause in there, we actually got the offer accepted at that amount. Because you'll have a lot of people say, well, isn't the listing agent just going to manipulate it to make it look like they have a higher offer to get a higher price? Yeah, you'll probably have some unethical agents out there that do that sort of thing, right? I'm sure it's not completely unheard of, but I would think the majority of people in this business aren't going to go that route. And we always ask for proof of the other offers. If there is an escalation clause, hey, if we're escalating to that price, provide me proof that you received other offers, and we try to verify that information. So a long way of getting to the answer, but hopefully all of that was helpful, especially if you're new to the whole escalation clause idea.
Jeb, speaking of ideas, we have an interesting idea here that I was not even thinking of. This viewer here is BookTube Goddess. There's apparently a BookTube. Can we get off of YouTube and take our ideas to BookTube?
Possibly.
Let's figure that out. I'm all about it. I like writing. So BookTube Goddess asks a good question. Can both married couples' names be on the title, but just one on the mortgage? Let's take out the married couple. Doesn't even matter. Two people. Jeb and I go buy a property together. We can both be on title and only one of us qualify for the mortgage. And most people don't know you can do it the other way also, but I don't ever advise it. We could both be on the mortgage and only one of us be on title as the owner to the property. The reason why you don't want to do that is you could never, you don't really have any ownership rights. You have the obligations of repaying the loan, but you don't have the ownership rights in the property. But yes, so the answer is, and you may be asking a follow-up question if you're watching, why would someone want to do that? Let's say that the wife has a great job and an 800 credit score, and her husband can't hold a job and has a 500 score because he spends all of his money unwisely. We leave that person off of the loan and we can qualify off the credit score of the better borrower. So back to Michael Durree's question, we got to use the lower middle score of two spouses only if we need both of their incomes. A lot of times if the one spouse with the better score, I actually had this situation just today. We set up a file. The wife had a much better score than the husband. She made plenty of money to qualify. We told the husband, bad news, you don't get to be on the loan, but you will be on title as an owner to the property.
All right, there you go. Okay, so Christian Nuno, does Zillow have all the houses that are on the market in their area, or is it other websites to see houses? So no, I think No, not necessarily, if I'm understanding your question correctly. So when Zillow became a competitor, if you will, so Zillow used to just be a website, right? They were a third party that provided information from the MLS on properties that were out there. Basically, they just syndicated those properties from the MLS. They didn't buy or sell properties. At that time, they more or less had access to everything out there, right? Now, you had to still allow Zillow essentially the option, if you will, to syndicate those properties, right? We have to allow Zillow to do that because they're a third party or what have you. The MLS has to subscribe to their feed or whatever to do it. Most of them did that. Once they became a competitor, you as a broker had an option to say, you know what? I don't want my properties going to Zillow. They're a competitor of mine. They can show their properties, and if you want to see, what I have listed, then you need to go here. I would tell you the majority of brokerages out there still allow their properties to be seen through Zillow. You'll have some people that are drawing that line in the sand and saying, no, we're not going to go that route because, Zillow is trying to take over the world and we don't want to be a part of it or whatever. If you want the most exposure on the property, you're going to allow the most people to see it. You're going to allow companies like Zillow and Redfins and all of these guys to syndicate the properties on their website. But to answer the question, no, they don't have access to every single property on the market because some brokerages aren't allowing them to show those properties. In addition, there might be, ways that, in some markets that Zillow doesn't have access to in some form or fashion. I'm not 100% sure, but most of the time, realtor.com, the bigger websites outside of Zillow usually have the majority of it. But the best option, honestly, is to get a feed directly from an agent somewhere. If you have a real estate agent, have them set you up on your search criteria. That way you're getting the information directly from the MLS. You're not needing it to syndicate through a third party and what have you in order to access it. So that's my answer to that question.
Greg followed up. There's a gentleman who's
Yep.
asking, how do I buy when my equity's in my house?
Gotcha.
My realtor said contingent offers are not being accepted. Is that true? She said, list the current home, then buy the new home.
I mean, I don't know where you're located. Not being accepted is a very strong way of putting it. Now, when you could say harder to get accepted, that's reasonable. Not getting accepted, I would say that's, I need a new realtor, right? I want a realtor that's willing to list my house contingent on me finding something. Now, it might be more difficult, right? You just have to understand that, but not is a strong word in my opinion. So there should be a way to do both. Again, just might be a little bit more difficult to do it.
And it could just be as simple as, Jeb, wouldn't the answer be just realize you're going to have a harder time? Is it impossible? No. It's sort of like FHA and VA offers. It's much more difficult to get them approved or accepted, but you can get them accepted.
Absolutely. I mean, again, I just did one, and there's multiple offers on the property. I'm supposed to have an acceptance tomorrow morning in my inbox. I haven't announced anything yet to anybody, clients, because I don't have it in writing. I've made, you learn in this business until you have something in writing, you don't go shouting at the rooftops that you got an offer accepted. So we'll see tomorrow if we're able to do it and compete against those other offers. Alex Rodani, if you refinance, does your date occupancy start over? Been in my house 5 years, but refinance recently. Do lenders now view my occupancy start date as the beginning of the new loan? And what bearing does that have on anything, Josh?
Yeah, that was going to be my question. What are you thinking, Alex, that it impacts? The only reason a lender cares where you've lived is to know that we have a 2-year residence history and to know, have you been paying a mortgage, have you been paying rent, have you been living rent free? So the loan application does require a 2-year residence history, but it certainly doesn't require 5 years. But most importantly, to your point, no, getting a new loan doesn't change your date of occupancy. That's how long you've lived in that property. Now, if you've owned that home and you lived there for 2 years, moved out for 2 years, and then moved back into the property, yeah, that would change it. But they're just, when asking how long have you lived in your current residence, the financing doesn't have any impact on that.
All right. Makeup Glam One. I'm trying to buy a condo in OC, Orange County. That's where we're located. I'm paying cash. I keep getting bid by finance offers. I offer over asking, but still no luck. Is the OC market going to get more condo inventory soon? Tough one. The second part of the question, let's answer first. I don't know the inventory is really going to pick up anytime soon. You're going into the time of year where things are going to slow down with regards to inventory, just, naturally. At the same time, you've got, some people that are going to need to sell coming out of forbearance and that sort of thing. So depending on those properties, you might see a little bit more inventory, but I don't think you're going to see any big changes with regards to inventory over the next, 3 to 4 months. I think the biggest push you're going to see in inventory is going to come after the new year, the start of spring, sometime probably mid to late January. I think you're going to start to see quite a bit more inventory come to the market. Just a guess, right? That there's nothing behind that other than just traditional cyclical, historically what happens in the market. Now, getting outbid by cash and paying over the asking price, you need a better realtor. I'll get that thing accepted tomorrow. I don't know. It sounds like there's a piece of the puzzle missing somewhere. If you're offering cash and coming in with competitive offers, there's absolutely no reason you should be getting outbid by a finance offer. Not to say there's anything wrong with finance offers, but you should be able to sell cash pretty easily for most people, especially in the environment that we're in now. Let's see. Should buyers agents expect their agents to perform the research on permitted renovations and improvements on a home to verify changes are code safe? I'm going to go out and say no. You'll have some agents that probably say yes. I mean, let's see. Do I do it on every single property? No, I don't. Do I do it on some properties? Absolutely. So if I go into a property and I feel like renovations have been made, walls have moved around, we'll do some research. But do I go through and make sure, everything on that property has been permitted or whatever? Most of the time I don't, because the information's online. It's easily accessible. If clients have questions, we either do the information for them or put them in the spot to find it. But I wouldn't say that is solely the buyer's agent's responsibility. I think it's also the buyer's responsibility in many cases, but a combination of both. But I can tell you, somebody that's been doing this a long time, I don't do it on every property. Maybe I should. Now that you mentioned that. So let's see. No, that's not what I wanted. Greg has another question. Baby boomers downsizing. Doesn't that increase supply? So that was a big thing, right, Josh? That was what's supposed to really create the inventory. I mean, that's what they said for years, is that, hey, listen, we got this generation that is going to be aging out of their properties. They're going to put them on the market. It's going to increase supply. But what you've had is a couple of things, right? You've got, for one, baby boomers are living longer. People are living longer than they ever expected, for one. Two, it's actually a lot less expensive in this environment for them to stay in the property in many cases, right? I mean, why would they sell a $1.5 million, just for example, $1.5 million house to go buy $1 million, a $1.3 million house with less square footage, or the same house with less square footage in many cases? So it's just, things have changed and not exactly what was expected. But Josh, what are your thoughts on that one?
1,000%. You look at the demographics. We talk about the demographics of millennials aging into home ownership, and we had an expectation that the boomers would age out of home ownership, whether they were downsizing, whether they were moving to homes, whether they were just passing away and leaving property on to their family. And we're not seeing it. Aging in place is much more common. And what I was going to say is, for us here in California, you also have the Prop 13 issue, where your property taxes are capped and don't go up to the current assessed value. And that's prevented a lot of them from moving. So we've talked about Prop 19 that passed last year. Now seniors can sell and buy an even more expensive home and take their tax base with them. So we'll see what impact that has. I haven't seen a huge impact to more seniors selling. Have you, Jeb?
No, not really. No, not at all, really. I mean, what I find is that baby boomers are typically looking, when they go to sell, they're looking at one of two things. They're either looking for a single level home, right? Because the stairs, right? We have a lot of properties that are 2-story here in California, and people are looking for that single level property. And then otherwise, they're looking to for some savings, right? If they're on a fixed income, maybe they're looking to go down, and where the market is gone with regards to prices, they can't find it. And so they're in a better position, probably paying less, just staying where they are versus going the other direction. So no, we haven't really seen an increase at all.
We've
Go
got
ahead.
shots fired at our boomer friends. Hi, my name is Tim. Says boomers love that Medicare and will never die. That's mean. That's mean. Boomers are people too.
There you go. You're too nice. Too nice. So we're what, hour 21 minutes in here. Haven't asked anything of you guys at the moment. We'll want to ask you to hit that like button. If you're watching us, you find any value in the content at all. Again, it just helps more people see it, which helps Josh and I, and that's why we're here. So hit it if you don't mind. We would appreciate it. Let's get back to the comments. So here's a good question, Josh. Jalul? Not sure.
I go with Jalul.
Jalul. We are well qualified for a VA loan for up to $750,000 for a single family home in Vancouver, Washington. We also have the cash to pay in full. Which way should we go?
So VA rates are spectacular. They're the lowest interest rates out there. Even with no down, you have no monthly mortgage insurance. You do have a funding fee. So that would impact my call here. The question largely comes down to, what are you going to do with that $750,000? If you're an accomplished investor and you feel like you can get a decent return, you're going to get a rate of 2.5%, 2.75%, somewhere in that range on that VA loan. Plus, it's going to be tax deductible. So your actual cost of that fund is, those funds are somewhere in the high ones, low twos. If you're comfortable investing that money and getting a greater return, you're better off financing as much as possible. Now, even though VA allows zero down, there can and is a benefit to putting a down payment. The more money you put down, if you're not exempt from your VA funding fee, which is VA mortgage insurance that they charge upfront, you can either pay it in cash or you can finance it onto your loan. It's lower the more you put down. I mean, not to the point of, I believe it's 5% and 10% are their two criteria, or their two tiers for lowering your VA funding fee. So if you're not exempt, if you don't have a service-related disability that makes you exempt from the funding fee, you may want to put a small down payment to keep that funding fee to a minimum. But for the most part, I would take as large a loan as you're comfortable with the monthly mortgage payment and keep having your funds invested, because you should be able to get 4 to 5% pretty safely and easily, which you will come out well ahead over the long haul.
So while we're on that, I want to bring up, so I received an email while we're online here, multitasking. It's from a viewer who watches the show. Clearly, viewer watches the show. I'm redundant here, guys. And they ask a question that I think is worth addressing. So can you please help in looking at the number and see if they make sense? So they sent me basically a fees worksheet from a loan. It says, I got pre-approved for $495,000 at a 2.875 30-year FHA loan. From what I understand, it looks like part of the 3.5% down payment is going towards the 1-year PMI. Is this normal procedure? Please advise. Thank you. Blah, blah, blah. So what happens is when you buy, like Josh mentioned a moment ago, VA, but when you buy with an FHA loan, there's an upfront mortgage insurance premium that is charged, onto top of that loan. It's 1.75%. So you're putting 3.5% down when doing an FHA loan. So half of your down payment essentially is going towards that upfront mortgage insurance that's required. So it looks like, you're really not getting the 3.5% down payment on your loan, because half of that money is going towards a mortgage insurance premium, if you will, if that makes sense. So I'm assuming that's what they're looking at. And so that's something that you have to consider when you're buying a property and you're using FHA and or VA, unless you're disabled with 100% disabled veteran, you're going to have some sort of funding fee. You're not going to necessarily have that, even though you're putting 3.5% down plus your closing costs. You're not necessarily going to have 3.5% equity in that property. So that is a downside, and using those loans, and something to keep in mind. And I would be, and honestly, Josh, probably not explained in very good detail for most people buying properties. Now, I know you on the lending side explain it, but I would tell you the majority of lenders out there probably don't.
when we do the side-by-side comparison of showing, and you have a video running through this, what does conventional loan and conventional mortgage insurance look like relative to an FHA with FHA mortgage insurance? So with a minimum down, the FHA monthly mortgage insurance is 0.85%. That's not horrible, but you're also paying 1.75% upfront. You don't pay it out of pocket, it gets financed into your loan. So most people don't see it, don't really concern themselves with it, but it's something that we want to compare. You may be willing to take a slightly higher monthly payment conventional loan to avoid that, because if you're putting 3% down conventional, you'll have more equity in the home than putting 3.5% down FHA. Now, Jeb points this out in this video, and we always tell people FHA is really attractive because the rates are exceptionally low. FHA and VA rates historically have been higher interest rates than conventional loans, and the reason for that is they have higher default rates than conventional loans. After the meltdown, the market stepped back and said, those are the only types of loans that have a true government guarantee. The US government says, we will step in and make a lender whole that makes these loans. And because of that, the performance of the bonds in the downturn, they perform much better, and you have a lower yield, a lower interest rate. So when we look at that, FHA is always going to be really attractive and likely is going to have a lower monthly payment, especially on the lower credit scores. But you want to look at the whole big picture and make sure your lender is giving you a comparison and showing you. Even if we're not going to do a conventional loan for you, and I know you're never going to do it, I want to show it to you so you can see what the cost and what the difference is, and maybe discuss alternatives for going around that.
No, good stuff. Got a couple other YouTubers here watching at the moment. Again, Matt is here saying smash the like button. Whoever's number 100 will get their offer accepted. Hashtag bro science. So, hey guys, you got 21 likes and you guys are get your offer accepted. But then Jason comes in and says he smashed the like button. So Jason, you're early, bud, but bro science says that, if you're putting in an offer, you're probably going to get it accepted too. So Jason and Matt both have YouTube channels, both worth checking out if you're interested in housing. I'm sure you're both familiar. Well, you guys are all familiar with them. If you're following me, you're probably following them as well. Let's see here. This is a good question. So Vegas real estate agent Reggie Nolasco. That's a long username, man.
It's a long handle.
Yeah, it took me a minute to get it out. I had to take a breath before I continued. So Wall Street Journal article, China's power shortfalls begin to ripple around the world. Power outages slow factories, prompting supply chain concerns. Will this impact raw materials, and how will this impact the housing market? So, obviously there's a bunch of stuff happening at China at the moment. But thoughts on that question, right there. The slowdown in China, if, taken into account, do you see that having an impact on U.S. housing or just U.S. in general? Where do you see that having an impact?
It's one of those issues where only time will tell. But one of the things that you notice with China, we have a relatively free market economy in the United States. China is a government-controlled economy with some elements of capitalism mixed in there. And their energy issues are largely self-created by things that the government has done, and they've already taken steps to reverse that. So I doubt it will be anything major, but you've heard it said that things get lost in the fog of war. Well, we're not in a wartime here, but the reaction to COVID and everything that's happening, the supply chains, economies around the world, there's just so many things going on that interact that it's really, really hard to say for anyone with any certainty, this is what the outcome is going to be. I don't expect it to be a big thing, but by the same token, could there be some smaller, shorter term effects? And could it grow into something larger if the Chinese government continued to do what they did in terms of limiting power and keeping factories with lower output? Absolutely.
No, good stuff. Couple questions here, kind of pertaining to the same thing. So Danielle Tapia says, I would like to add my partner to the title, but he is not enrolled in the loan. Is this possible? Yes. You just close the loan, do a grant deed, a quick claim deed, adding them to title.
You can do it through close. So
Yeah,
if she already closed on it, then yeah, the grant deed would be the way to do it. You take a grant deed from yourself to the two of you. But if you're in contract and in escrow, depending on the type of loan you're doing, They can sometimes require an amendment to add them to the transaction. So that's probably why Jeb was going the other direction, saying just do it after close. But you can do it in a single transaction and have them title only. So it doesn't have to be a spouse, kind of the example we used before. If Jeb and I buy a property together, we can both be on title and only one of us on the loan. So friend, family, brother, whoever, if you're buying a home together, anyone can be on the title without being on the loan.
And that answers that question right there from hi y'all. Too. You like how I did that? Anyway, so let's see here. There's a couple others pertaining to that. I just saw another good question here, Josh. Let's see. Where is it?
Keep
Okay,
looking for
here we
that.
go.
Okay.
Why do home sellers care if the offer is cash or a check from the bank? I don't understand the difference. So typically when you're making an offer with a loan, there's a couple things involved, right? You have the loan approval process has to be underwritten by a bank. There's appraisal typically involved. There's multiple things that could potentially go wrong. Now, if the borrower has done their due diligence and actually gotten pre-approved up front with a lender that knows what they're doing, there's less of a chance of that fall through, but you never know, right? They could lose their job. Something could happen, causes that transaction to fall apart. Cash is king, right? Very little can happen to impact the cash offer, right? There's no appraisal. Typically, there's no loan. There's less potential issues or, that could go wrong. That why, cash can happen. And typically cash can happen quicker in some instances than a loan. So if you're looking to close, sooner, that could be another reason, but that's why.
So Alex followed up with a clarification. Is owner-occupied refinance looking to buy a new primary house
Yep.
and keep the current one? So we've talked about this on the show.
Right.
We've talked about this on the show before many times. The lender on the new home that you're looking to purchase is going to ask you, wait, didn't you just do an owner-occupied cash out refinance on the other home? And what changed? There's no
Now, how are they going to know that, Josh?
So there's post meltdown, every loan is registered in something called MERS. It's the Mortgage Electronic Registration System. So they're going to know. They're going to know the terms of the loan that you did. So think before MERS, you could go out and go to 5 realtors, 5 lenders, and buy 5 homes at one time, and no one else knew what the hell was going on. Now with MERS and other tracking systems, you're not going to do that. Everyone's
I
going
laugh
to know.
because I remember that very
Yes,
well.
and people did it. The people did it. Maybe not 5 at a time, but 2 and 3 at a time. So the lender's going to know what you've done, and they're going to know what you've told the other lender. Now, we talked about this. The best example I have, we have a deal we closed in January 28th of this year. We closed on March 15th on another owner-occ purchase. So owner-occ cash out and then owner-occ purchase. And the reason why we were able to do that is we explained to the new lender, here's what happened. And I had emails to back this up. The buyer was taking the cash out to buy an investment property. While looking for investment properties, they found their dream home, shifted gears. And I had emails from back in December when we first started talking about their loan saying, this is what we're doing. And they made an exception for us and they did that. There is no hard and fast rule that says it can't be done. It was done in that situation. It was not in any way a problem for the lender and selling it into their investor, but it's going to be case by case and you're going to have to cover that hurdle. So in a perfect world, you do your cash out, sit on it for 6 or 7 or 8 months, and then, hey, I happen to find a perfect home. If you do it a month or 2 later, you're going to have a hard time convincing the second lender that you didn't, bend the truth with the first lender that did your cash out.
Correct. Yeah, there you go. And Vegas real estate agent Reggie Nolasco gave us $5. Thank you, Reggie. Appreciate it. Thanks for the kind words as well. Maria has a good question here. How do I find out how long I have to pay extra on property taxes for Mello-Roos? So Mello-Roos is something we have here in California. You might have it in your state. It's essentially an infrastructure bond, to build out a community. Sometimes they build entire communities, if you will, not just a housing tract, but a community. And in order to build the fire departments, the playgrounds, the all of that good stuff, the streets, all of that, they add bonds to your taxes called Mello-Roos. And it's added on top of your property taxes. And typically these bonds are 25, 30-year bonds, a little bit different depending on where you're located. So how do you find out how long the bonds are? You contact the county. Tax assessors should have some information on it. I don't think there's anything in the CCNRs or anything like the HOA docs that actually talk about the bonds. I think it's going to have to come from the county. Typically, I usually ask the real estate agent on the other side, and they're able to provide it to me. But Josh, do you know exactly where you get that information? Is it the county?
I do not. We don't come up with it very often. We track it down, we find out what the numbers are. But what I will say is government employees get a bad name, and I've said bad things about people at the assessor's office, but I've had a couple calls recently with folks in the Orange County and LA County assessor's office where they've been really helpful. Just do your homework and know what you're asking, and if they have the answer, they'll guide you to it.
Yeah, but they should be able to tell you on from the county assessor. They should be able to look at the parcel number and tell you exactly how long those bonds are. If they can't, someone can down at that office. But if not, last resort is ask your agent, ask the listing agent. Somebody should be able to get that information from you. Here's one for you, Josh. S&M Media. Wow, we got these. S&M Media Production. Zoll Photography is asking, what percentage of one's income do you recommend people paying for their mortgage payment? My go-to answer would be whatever you're comfortable with. But Josh, what would you say as somebody that deals with this every day?
It's a version of that, because we've talked about this on the show. One of the big things that people will say is, hey, I need to get pre-qualified. I need you to tell me what I can afford. I have no idea what you can afford. I know what the guidelines are, and I know we successfully close loans for people that all have very different ideas of or comfort zones of where they're at. We have probably the best example, a client of Jeb's. We closed a condo here in Huntington Beach 2 years ago, a VA loan with a 69% debt to income ratio.
I laugh every time I hear that one.
I looked at it and I'm like, hey, are you sure you're comfortable with this? I have you approved. Are you comfortable with this? His girlfriend lived with him, and I don't think he has his girlfriend anymore. So I don't know.
No, he doesn't. He's solo, bro.
Did he get a new girlfriend? Because I don't know how
know
he's making the payment. So his comfort level was, my girlfriend lives with me. She's going to help pay the bills. So generally, when someone goes to an extreme debt to income ratio, it's because they know that they have another source of income that we can't use for qualifying that's not being accounted for. So long way of saying exactly what Jeb said. What are you comfortable with? Now, we can walk you through what it looks like and the difference between owning and renting. The tax benefits of ownership on the lower purchase prices isn't nearly as great as what it used to be after the 2018 tax changes, but there are still some benefits there, and we want to walk you through that. And what I will always say, the best example I like to use, when I bought my first condo, monthly payment was $1,138 a month. A couple days before I was about ready to write that $1,138 check, I said, I don't know how I'm going to make this payment. I have no idea how I'm going to do this. That's way too much money. And that is a common theme among all first-time buyers. It's just you're never comfortable with what the payment is. After 3, 4, 5, 6 months, if you went into it wisely and thought through it and budgeted and had expert advisors working with you on it, you're always going to be comfortable. Like, I haven't had a client default in probably 12, 13 years. And long way of saying, do your research, do your budgeting, know where you spend your money. Use something like Mint or another tool for tracking your spending, so you really know where you're at. So I can tell you what the maximum guidelines are. With an FHA loan, we'll go 57% debt to income. VA will let you stop just shy of 70% for your best qualified borrowers. Conventional loans are 50%. Jumbo are generally 45%. So are those reasonable numbers? Yeah, people close at those debt to income ratios all day. But I also have clients that go, no way, bro. 35% is the max I'm comfortable with. Or they'll tell me a dollar amount and we run it through and it's like 35%. So a lot of things come into play with this. How do you spend your money? What's your income trajectory? A lot of our younger buyers, they know they've been getting a $5,000 raise every year, and they're due for a promotion that's going to get them another $15,000. People like that may be much more comfortable with a higher payment, but it all comes down to you personally.
I'm typing. Hold on, people.
Well, I was talking and I did not look at questions here, but there's definitely some good ones here. Most importantly, let's talk about Michael Durree. For once in his life, is giving compliments and saying that he's liking my beautiful Clippers hat. So I commend him for having an improvement in his tone.
All right. Jennifer is asking a question here about who would like to see an investor on the show come to answer questions. We got some yays on that. I put a poll in the comment section, actually asking. I have this idea of having 4 to 6 people on the show. Josh and I are typically on here, but maybe adding another lender, maybe 2, another realtor or 2 on it. All YouTubers, all people that doing a live on a Wednesday like this for some time, having people drop in, drop out. Is that something that would interest you? Do you think it could be good, or would it be too convoluted having that many people on? Because clearly it would be difficult to answer the question, right? We would have to throw questions to certain people and moderate it that way. But it was a thought I had. I thought it could be good. I thought it could be good. So let me know in the comments below, and then you guys can continue answering Jennifer as well.
You need to find a way to make it interactive where it could be like Hollywood Squares, like you could call on your
Ooh,
celebrity to answer your question.
Squid Games. You get the question wrong, we kill you.
That's
How's
problematic.
That? Why? I mean, it's you didn't get the question right. You're wrong. Is the housing market going to crash? Anybody that answers yes, boom, dead. I love it. I love that show, bro. I'll just do it. Like, that's perfect. Then you only have good information out there. Anyway, Maddie. So Maddie's back. Maddie, listen, bro. Don't come in here saying you're here without telling us if you're an escrow or not. Are you an escrow? And did you change the pictures on your house? That's all I want to know. 2 questions. Yes and yes should be the answers. Anyway, sorry. Rick is asking, planning on renting my condo at the end of the year. Do you guys have any good advice on what I should look for? Are you renting it yourself? Are you hiring an agent to rent it out? If you're going to rent it yourself and go through that process of finding the tenant, all that stuff, what I would recommend is, obviously you're going to need to see an application, right? But you're going to want to see 2 most recent pay stubs. You're going to want to see assets in the bank. A background check is probably necessary, along with a credit report, driver's licenses, all these things to verify the people are who they say they are. They make the amount of money that they say they make, and that they're the people that you think they are, right? You want to do as much research, especially in the environment that we just came out of, to make sure you have good tenants. If you're hiring an agent to do it, then they should be doing all of that stuff that I just mentioned. The other thing is, finding out what it's actually, how much you can rent it for. There's enough websites out there at the moment to find out what similar properties are renting for. If you're in a market with low demand, you might be able to get a little bit, or high demand rather, low inventory, you might be able to get a little bit more for it. Like here in Southern California, you might be able to push that price a little bit. So all things to consider, but I wouldn't say there's a hard, fast rule that you need to consider when renting your house, other than, do you want to be a property manager? Do you want to deal with people calling you to complain, talk crap on your property, to, call you in the middle of the night that the toilet won't flush, that sort of thing? Because that's what it is in many cases. Sometimes you get great tenants, you never have to deal with it. In other cases, you get somebody that calls you because the light bulb goes out and they want you to change it. I can tell you that from experience. So, Josh, anything you want to add to that?
Screen the shit out of them. And whatever criteria is important to you, make sure you get credit. Call on their references. Have a conversation with them. Just ask them, why are you moving? How long have you been at the last few places? It is a landlord's market right now.
I keep snorting in there. I love when people love when I do that.
No one
always
enjoys
comment. They love it.
So really, you just, whatever's important to you, use the leverage that you have right now in the current market to ask them questions that are important to you and do the vetting that you need to, and you'll be fine.
All right. Good stuff. Good stuff. Maddie's in escrow. Yes to pictures. I'm looking it up, bro. I'm going to look up it online. Make sure you're not BSing me about the pictures. Rob says, this is a good question. Are most prospective buyers in this market open to rent backs? We are listing our house in Simi Valley tomorrow. I'm a federal employee and we're moving to Toronto in February. So the first part of the question, yes, most buyers are open to some sort of rent back. But what you have to understand is if they're getting a loan, typically speaking, 60 days is the most that lender is going to actually allow. So if you find a buyer that will rent for you longer, your agreement has to be done outside of escrow, right? The lender can't know about it. Otherwise, they're not going to allow an owner occupied loan if it's going longer than 60 days. The other thing is February, that's 5 months out, 4.5 months out. That's a long time. But you might have a property, right? I sold one back in, I don't even remember when it was at this point. Earlier in the year, they allowed my clients 6 months of free rent back. I think it was in May because they're going till November. So 6 months of free rent. It was a unique property. It was a very, very nice property. The client really wanted it. That's how they made their offer stand out, right? They were competing against other people. They decided to do that. So the answer is yes, but it may be a little bit more difficult. I mean, you're moving, the market has changed since then, but it hasn't changed. So it's a hard question to address without actually knowing your property and knowing what's happening in Simi Valley. I would say here in Orange County, in the property where I sold that one, you could probably do it again. But 6 months is a long time, and you're pushing on 4.5. So I think not every person is going to be open to that, right? It's just finding the right one.
We have an important one here. Hi, y'all is now making jokes.
No, it's hi, y'all.
Yeah, well, they say Lakers run LA. They apparently don't run the Bay Area, and the Medic Ward half team that the Golden State Warriors threw out last night handled them just fine. So we'll see how the rest of the season goes. We had to give the Warriors credit since we bashed on Graciel's Giants earlier in the evening. But yeah, the Lakers don't run anything. 87-year-old men.
I'm still trying to just figure this one out here. I'm going to read it as it says, and you maybe you can decipher what's going on here. Good evening, Jeb and Lewis, not Luis. You handsome devil. Why? Lewis. Jesus. Why does Encompass and DU now? Why does Encompass and DU not match when entering flood premium in supplemental ink filled? What the flip, Chip? Encompass is so finicky. So Encompass is another, like a loan software, if you will. So I when I was scanning it, I was like, what the hell is going on here? So Josh, Mr. Lewis, who is willing 7? Do you know willing 7?
I don't know, but they're confusing me because they're saying when entering the flood premium in the supplemental income field, why would we put a flood premium in income? And if it's not, again, so
what the flip, Chip?
The easy answer is don't use a subpar loan origination system like Encompass and switch to one that actually works, or just throw your flood insurance into your hazard insurance and it will give you correct ratios and give you a correct answer and let your underwriter figure it out later on. Unless, willing 7, you are an underwriter and this is your headache and hassle to figure out.
There you are. And listen, as the person that's supposed to be running this whole thing, after reading that, I'm baffled at the fact that I even have people watching.
Jeb, we understand you're from North Carolina. English is a second language.
Dude, it really is. It's so funny. So when my kids talk to my family back home, every single time,
go, what the hell did they say?
No, they say I can't understand what they're saying. Like I literally, it's like I'm translating. It is the weird. I'm like, why can't you understand? Can't understand it. But anyway, they can't. So thanks for the info. I did gain some. They gain knowledge, example, escalation clause, title naming, etc. Thank you, Neil, for this $5 super chat. Appreciate you being here. You guys answer good or ask good questions, and everyone benefits. So that is part of the deal here, guys. That's why we go through each one of these questions and try to keep you up to date. So now you're Luis. Luis, you are basically the same person as the LO I work with. P.S. He's a work in progress. Jeb, you look like a werewolf. Dogecoin betrayed me. Dogecoin. Where is Dogecoin, by the way?
Should have gone Ethereum. Should have gone Ethereum.
Oh, boy. Here we are. So what do we got?
I'm going to sell my house and put it all on Ethereum, and I'm going to come back and tell you when I get my mansion in Newport Coast when that stuff goes to like 50 grand a coin.
Bro, you're one of those people now?
Yep.
Oh, boy. You should start a YouTube channel and talk about it. Let's see here. Hi, y'all. 17 chips to 0. Talking about your basketball there, Borowski.
Listen, history's wonderful. Let's talk about the future. 87-year-old men aren't winning anything, as witnessed by 0-1.
I'm reading some question here. So Rick is asking a question about Zillow. We addressed it at the beginning of the show, probably the first 5 minutes of the show or so, is addressed to talking about Zillow. So if you joined us live and you want to see that, just go back and watch it after this is over. We explain our thoughts in a little bit more detail there. Guys, nobody's getting their offers accepted because we're not even at 100 likes and we're an hour into this joint or 2 hours into this whole thing. Who are you people? Can't show us some love? Hit the thumbs down. Oh, we got 5 thumbs down. We can add those up and get 96. So we're close. I want to see if I can get 100 thumbs downs. Thumbs downs. Is that right? Thumbs down. There we go. Again, English, bro. Maria says, do you get some money back after a year when home was purchased for the close? Okay. Do you get some money back after a year when the home was purchased for the closing costs? I know someone got about $3,000 back after 1 year, guessing overpayment for home closing costs. No, typically what happens is maybe they overpaid their property taxes. And once the taxes were paid, they saw that there was an overage in the account. And then you might get a reimbursement, but I've never heard of a reimbursement of closing costs. Josh?
No, not at all. I mean, everything is an estimate at the time that you send your money into escrow. So once it closes, those are pretty tight estimates, but once it closes, they will do a final reconciliation in accounting and you get your final settlement statement with a small refund check. But anything related to closing costs would happen then at that time. It wouldn't happen later. So I'm with Jeb that it's most likely something related to property tax overpayment.
There you go. Rob, $5 super chat. Thank you, Rob, for the information on the rent back. I was intending to list closer to my move date, maybe in November, but real estate agent said I shouldn't wait. I agree with your agent. And not because I think anything's going to happen with the market, but you're moving in February, right? Your relocation date's in February. The closer you get to those holidays, the less chance you have of it being the demand being there. Again, I don't think there's a big shift in the market. You just got less buyers typically looking that time of year, which could impact what you ultimately get for your property. Now, it's a good time. You put your property on the market. We're halfway through October. So you go, you're going on tomorrow. You get a 30-day escrow that's putting you around Thanksgiving. I'm sure, asking for a little bit more time to push you out mid-December, maybe even towards the end of December, put you at the beginning of the year. I mean, that means that you're only out 30 days before you have to leave or find something to do for that period of time. So I don't think I don't think it's that crazy, especially if you ask for a rent back. You'd be pretty close by the time you go into escrow, especially if you had a longer escrow as to meeting that time frame. So,
and I would say you would want it in escrow prior to Thanksgiving, because that's when the slowdown really happens. 27 years. This is my 27th year of doing this, and sitting here, people always go, "Oh, isn't it super slow for you between the holidays?" It's not super slow because we're closing all of the deals that went into escrow prior to Thanksgiving. What does get really slow is January, because most people are not out looking for homes, putting homes in under contract between Thanksgiving and New Year's. So that January, February is actually our slowest period of the year. So, and that's not anything due to us, it's buyers and their active period. So that would be my 2 cents on that one.
So because we keep getting Luis and Lewis and everything, but the actual correct spelling, we're going to put your name at the top of the screen here with your email address so you can see Lewis. But Dan saying you guys rock. I love Luis's merciless honesty. Very refreshing in this day and age. Holy cow. If you could have a camera running in here constantly, there would be one of two things.
Channel on YouTube.
One of two things would happen. We would have I would have no subscribers at all, and likely get sued, or we'd have just a ton of people looking for just brutal honesty, because there's a lot of it that happens off camera, day in and day out, people, all day long. In fact, it could be a reality show, but we would probably not have any people watching.
The fun part is yesterday's brutal honesty was not from Josh. Jeb and I closed a transaction. His buyer, our borrower, and an escrow officer who had been spectacular throughout the process, just had enough and unloaded on a funder in an email chain. So she called and profusely apologized today. And we told her that's not a problem. We do that every day in the office.
It's too good. Let's see. We're at 155 or hour 55 minutes on here. Appreciate you guys watching. Let's get a couple more questions here, Josh. We'll wrap this thing up. See anything you want to? I think we pretty much got a lot of this stuff nailed down tonight.
So here, this one's interesting, and I'm going to answer for you because my, and I'm not going to touch the rest. I'm confident the first name is Mai. Do you guys have any scary experiences showing houses to people? Would love to hear some scary stories. Now, when I was in my flipping days, I've been in some scary houses, and one of them was Jeb's listing over in Santa Ana.
I remember that one.
It had a little shack in the backyard that
was
used for illegal activities that probably involved imprisoning people against their will.
Yes,
and that freaked both of us out, and no one wanted to go back in there and see it again.
True story. I still have photos of that somewhere. I will find them.
Pull them up next week.
I will try to find them. I could still tell you exactly what the house was. Yellow. It was on a corner. I could if I saw the address, I would know it. Wow. Yeah, that was an interesting one. Have I had any scary stories? Back in 2000, around the same time, I was selling a lot of foreclosures, and a lot of times, we would get these properties, and they were supposed to be vacant at that. Well, they weren't necessarily supposed to be vacant. A lot of times they were vacant properties. So we would kind of, walk around the property, knock on the door, nobody come to the door, look in the windows, things are, look empty, what have you. But I personally wasn't there, but this one was in Santa Ana as well. Client went to the property, knocked on the door. As he knocks on the door, Robert, who was working with me at that time, the guy runs out of the house with a knife. He had just stabbed the guy. He was chasing a guy out of the front door. So he stabbed him and was chasing him with the knife. And as he did, he ran through the knife on top of like a carport and like stormed off. And so the cops were called. Robert at the time had to stay and talk to the police and this whole thing. But like, as soon as he knocked on the door opened and two dudes ran out, one with a knife stabbing the other guy. So that happened. But many times I walked into properties that I thought were vacant. There were people in there. That's never good. I've also walked into properties where people were in the bed underneath the covers, and I was in the room showing the property when people popped out. And that's some scary shit. If you think the property or the room is not occupied and somebody pops out. So I make it a point now to knock on doors and yell before I go into properties, because I have walked into some crazy stuff.
Because people will tell you, oh, no one's home. Yeah, just go ahead. And you get there and you're walking through the house, and lots of surprises.
Yeah. And most embarrassing story, while we're here, one time was out on, this was in Garden Grove. It was a condo, 2-story condo, walk out onto a balcony, and with the clients, the door shuts behind us. We're locked out onto the balcony. I have to climb onto the roof of the building. And fortunately, so I'm on the roof of the building. I mean, at this time, this is when I don't know, this is probably 10 years ago. I don't even know how long ago it was. I used to wear slacks and dress shirts. I don't do that anymore, clearly. I mean, I look like a bum. But I might even have had on a tie. I'm on the roof of the property trying to find a window open. I have to go over the peak to the other side. Fortunately, the window was open. I was able to slide it up, get in the window, come back through and unlock the door. Otherwise, we would have been stuck out there. It would have, until somebody came and found us. But yeah, so that's the most embarrassing one I have.
We need someone to just start following us around with a GoPro on their head. We just need to hire someone.
Oh God, that would be
entry-level person to just GoPro, follow us around.
I'm pretty sure people would hate me after that if they don't already. Let's see how many thumbs down we have. We have 5 thumbs down, so we're doing all right. Anyway, appreciate you guys being here. So next week, we're going to try to make this happen with some more people on here. We got 66% of you. I went from 71. Now we're down to 66% of people saying that they would like to see some other people on here. So maybe we'll start slow. Maybe we'll just go 3 people next week. So one other person and us, and or maybe not. Who knows? You don't know what to expect when you come here. Don't know if I can read. You don't know what you're going to get. But either way, we appreciate you guys being here. Always appreciate the support. Luis's email is on the top of the screen there if you want to hit that and contact him. But if you guys need a contact for a referral anywhere in the US for really anything, You can hit that link there at the bottom of the screen.
I was
It'll
going to
come
say
up here.
I've sent more deals out to other people around the country this week than I've done this week. So yes, we
Now,
can absolutely help with
now we're
that.
definitely referring a lot of people out, real estate agents, mortgage professionals. So reach out if you need somebody. Happy to make that connection. But Josh, any final thoughts tonight, my friend?
No, it's just interesting time here. I do expect rates are elevated. They're likely to stay elevated. I don't know if that's 2 months, 6 months, but if you're looking at moving, it shouldn't really impact that decision, because I do fully expect that the longer term downward trend in interest rates will stay low because of the deflationary forces that are much more macro and long term versus the shorter term inflationary forces we're looking at.
All right. Good stuff. We'll continue to keep you updated. We're back next week at 5. Appreciate you being here. Adios.